If I were him, I'd be afraid of showing up as well. It's too bad, but I think Canadians will read into that a prime minister who's afraid of his own record.
Mr. Trudeau hasn't shown up for 4 years, and he's not showing up to this debate. I'm really disappointed by that. I think Canadians are disappointed.
I am very much looking forward to the 3 opportunities we'll have during this campaign to debate with the other leaders. I think there are really important choices for Canadians to make.
The first leaders' debate of the election campaign underway tonight. Maclean's and City TV are hosting this one, but as you heard there, Justin Trudeau is choosing to skip it. So what are the optics around that decision, and do voters really care who attends? It's day 2 of the campaign. I'm going to do that the whole campaign, and it's Thursday, so that means it's also time for At Issue. Chantal Hébert is in Montreal. Andrew Coyne is in Toronto, and Althea Raj is in Ottawa tonight. Good to see everyone. Again, I'll promise I'll try really hard not to call you tomorrow. Okay, let's start with why Justin Trudeau is not there and whether that matters. I am, I know we all talk about it in our circles. I am not sure that it matters outside of our circles. So Chantal, what do you make of his decision?
As a journalist, I like the more debates, the merrier, and I would have been happier if the Prime Minister had agreed, the Liberal leader, to participate in all debates. But from a political point of view, I don't think the cost of skipping this debate is very high for the Liberals. One of the reasons is that it's very early on in the campaign. It hasn't gelled yet. And if I were the other leaders, I'd consider that it is an opportunity to do more than take shots at Justin Trudeau, and maybe to have a chance to talk about their own policies and what they have to offer.
Yeah, particularly because 2 of them at least need to sort of better introduce themselves to Canadians, probably. Andrew, what do you make of the strategy?
I'm not sure that I necessarily agree with it. I can understand it if he was well out in front and you want to take no risks and that kind of thing, and maybe as the incumbent you're more likely to come under fire. But as we saw in the last election, he's pretty good at debating. He's not up against particularly sterling debaters. Maybe they benefit from low expectations, as he did in 2015. But he would, it seems to me, would have the advantage of looking prime ministerial. He'd have, something to talk about his record, et cetera. So I'm not exactly sure that it's that much of a percentage play. It looks odd. He hasn't really given a very good explanation for it. At first, it was because, well, I'm only doing the official debates, and then he agreed to the TVA debate. So it just looks like political opportunism, and I agree with you, probably won't pay that high a price for it, but it's odd.
What do you think, Althea?
Well, it's a clear front-runner strategy. I think that, as a citizen, I would like to see more leaders participate in more debates. But from a strategic point of view, I can absolutely understand why the Liberal Party would not want to put him in that position. Preparing for a debate takes not just a few hours and a few days, but often several weeks. While the 2 or 3 leaders actually took time off of their campaign plans to arrange their schedules around the Maclean and City TV debate, the Prime Minister is going to 3 unheld ridings, Liberal leader I should call him now, 3 unheld ridings where he's getting local media coverage in seats that the Liberals think that they can win, or at least they're in a hard fought to win. And so I think that's what the calculus is. I'm surprised actually that the Liberal leader is not doing a town hall, because I would have assumed that the Liberals would have presented a competing event to kind of split journalists' attention, and they're not doing that.
I'm guessing, though, that from the Conservatives' point of view, it's not ideal either, in the sense that Andrew Scheer needs to show himself as the Prime Minister in waiting, the contender for power. Debating with Jagmeet Singh and Elizabeth May sends a different kind of message. And I'm going to be curious to see. I'm not that curious about the Liberal strategy of skipping it, although I think a town hall in Edmonton for Justin Trudeau tonight might have been a bit more risky than going to a debate in Toronto.
That's probably why they're not having it.
Let's just set that aside. But I am going to be curious to see what strategies they all bring to this. The NDP and the Greens are fighting each other for the same constituency of voters. And so will they spend as much time on each other as they spend talking about the absent Justin Trudeau or talking about the very conservative Andrew Scheer? I'm very curious to see what they bring and how they perform.
It'll change the dynamic for sure. I mean, Maclean's is leaving an empty podium on the stage, which is an interesting sort of editorial comment that they're making as well. But the Conservatives that I was speaking with today didn't really seem to be worried about talking about the other parties at all.
Yeah, it would be better for him to be on the same stage as Justin Trudeau and to share in the kind of prime ministerial aura as a prime minister in waiting. It also means there probably won't be as large an audience as there would otherwise. And obviously, if you're in the race and you're slightly behind, as I think the Conservatives would be in terms of seats, then you need all the exposure you can get. But nevertheless, it's a kind of a free kick for him. He can take shots at Trudeau without worrying about him firing back. I agree that he'll probably use the opportunity to try and introduce a more positive vision for his own. He'd be well advised to do so. I think he can also be somewhat at ease that he probably won't come under a lot of attack from the other two leaders. They do not have any interest in sharing in the Liberal strategy of demonizing the Conservatives, because if you demonize the Conservatives, that plays into the idea of, well, you have to vote Liberal to stop them.
Yeah.
So for the Greens and the NDP, they want people to feel licensed to stay with the party that they prefer. And of course, what they also want is a minority government so that they can have as much leverage as possible. So they don't want to contribute to the Liberals, getting further ahead as well. They want to pull them back into the pack.
That's a good
I
point.
don't know if I
Althea,
agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think that there is some overlap in some parts of the country where there's swing Conservative NDP seats. Elizabeth May's Green Party takes from all corners. Green progressive Conservative voters are easily at home in her party. I think that we are going to see her attack Andrew Scheer's climate plan. I would expect that. Yeah. I would also expect some discussion about values with regards to Mr. Singh and Mr. Scheer in Quebec, perhaps. I mean, the other thing we need to think about is while it's a pan-Canadian, it will be broadcast, on CPAC and on the web. City TV and Maclean's, City TV especially, the footprint is mostly in the GTA area.
Sure
so
is, yeah.
the debates might very well be focused on vote-rich GTA and not, things that are perhaps more of interest to voters in Quebec, for example.
Let's go back to the notion that we may see the NDP and the Greens duking it out. Both of them have sort of alluded to the fact that they don't want to get into that dynamic, and that's perhaps for obvious reasons. They're both asserting that they are still fighting for to be really competitive. I mean, that would be we have never seen that kind of thing before. So I don't know, what would you expect from that, Chantal? What would you be looking for there?
Really hard to forecast. You have to remember that we've never seen Andrew Scheer in that format. We've never seen Jagmeet Singh in that format. And what they called debates over the course of the NDP leadership campaign were really friendly. Let's hash out ideas. So I have a hard time putting Jagmeet Singh in the frame of someone who goes on the attack on Elizabeth May. But I stand to be corrected. I do know that the NDP today feels that they don't really need Singh to go after Elizabeth May, because so far the Green campaign has been doing it to itself.
Yeah, that is true. They've been shooting themselves in the foot a lot again today. But would there be any benefit to it at all? Because they are close in the polls, Andrew. So
yeah, I mean, traditionally people felt there's no percentage in going after the Greens, partly because they're not going to form a government, but also because everyone likes them. They're sort of cuddly and likable, and what's the percentage? As they get higher in the polls, I think it becomes a little bit more legitimate and seen to be legitimate to expose them to scrutiny, especially if you're the NDP, where they are within 2 points of you nationally. They're ahead of you east of Ontario. He'll have to be careful about how he goes about it, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were some critical comments. The NDP certainly, at the sub-leadership level, will tell you that the Greens are inexperienced, that they're flaky, that they're not really left of center, they're just conservatives and bikes. You sometimes hear that line. And so you may see, you saw a little bit of a rehearsal of that with this question of which party would or would they not support in a minority, where the Greens were saying, at least at one point, Elizabeth May was saying, well, we could support either party, and Jagmeet Singh made a point of saying, well, we would not support the Conservatives. So there was a little, I think that was aimed at the Greens.
I think that we are not going to see Elizabeth May and Jagmeet Singh go at each other on a personal level. But I think that there are policy differences that the NDP especially is going to want to highlight. The fact that Elizabeth May wants to build a refinery, for example. The fact that Elizabeth May won't whip her caucus on issues of abortion. There are things that we've seen NDP partisans and Green partisans go at each other on social media, for example, that we might see the leaders frame, but not as a personal attack, because I think voters who are attracted to Elizabeth May and even Mr. Singh, which you saw in the NDP leadership race, they very much like their kind of like fun-loving personality. They're authentic and they're genuine, and they all want everybody to work together. And so I think that is still very much part of their brand, and it would sound off for them to be uncharacteristic in their attacks.
I'm going to leave it with this. I should disclose, I suppose, that Althea and I are moderators of the Independent Debate Commission, and the Toronto Star is also part of that, and the Ottawa Bureau Chief is one of
Don't
those
drag
moderators.
me into that,
I'm not.
please.
I'm just putting it out there. It's not you.
Thank you.
But let me just end on this very quickly. Do you think that if debates are important, Chantal?
Yes, I think debates are important, although I'm not sure this particular debate so early on is important. I think they focus people on the notion that the vote is coming.
Debates are terribly important. They can be important for bad as well as for good.
Sure.
And I think they've been until now a big missed opportunity. All too often they devolve into shouting matches. We in the media treat them as if they were title fights, who won, who lost, rather than what did we learn about the leaders in the course of it. I think the Leaders Debate Commission, if you'll forgive me, was a missed opportunity there that I think they should have sketched out a much more ambitious vision of how we're going to do the debates. I think there could be many more of them than just 2 official debates. I think I'd like to see them in both languages rather than segregated by language. So they have real potential for good. I think there's still at this point an unexplored potential.
Okay, last quick word to you, Althea.
I agree. Debates are important.
Yeah.
It's quick.
Good. I agree too. Thanks, everyone.